Let's get started.
Nolan or Amy, do you want us to go ahead and kick it off? We just wanted to see if you guys had any announcements or other stuff you wanted to add before passing it over to Maddie, myself, Marina, and Sidich.
I think Amy might have a few things that she wants to say, and then I can introduce you guys and kind of let members know how, like, just to not interrupt you guys and maybe put questions in the chat for the end. But then after that, I'll pass it off to you guys, and you guys can just run with it.
I was just going to do like general housekeeping, but Nolan, you sound like you have it, so you can just do that. I'll just be here on the side.
Perfect. Should we start at just in 2 minutes at 11:10?
I feel like you can start.
Just go ahead and start.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming to, I guess, our second consulting club meeting this year. We're really lucky to have PwC here with us presenting. They're going to talk about their company and kind of what recruiting is going to look like this fall. You guys will have the opportunity to ask questions, but please put them in the chat so that they can answer them at the end, so that they're not interrupted while they're presenting. And then if you don't put a question in the chat, we may have time at the end for a Q&A where you guys can ask them some questions. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Caitlin and the rest of her team.
Awesome. Thank you, Nolan and Amy. Maddie, do you want to go ahead and you can share your screen? Friday is a very big day for Cal Poly. Apparently I have another conflict at 11:30, so I will be with y'all for the next 20-ish minutes, but Maddie is also here to represent just the recruiting side, so she can also answer questions that you have for us. Also, like Nolan said, have a couple other folks from my team here as well, so Sidich and Marina as well. So we'll be going through a lot of stuff for y'all, but just as Nolan said, feel free to pop questions in the chat. We definitely want to make this as interactive as possible and give you all as much information as possible as well. We don't want it to feel like school, even though there is a slide deck. We really want you all to feel engaged as we go through things and ask questions. So we do have a QR code. So this QR code will just share your information with us. So if you're interested in learning more about our roles, being added to our mailing list and things like that, feel free to just use your phone to scan that QR code and sign in with us. We'll also share it again at the end as well. So no need to scramble to find your phone or something else right now. But if you're interested in sharing your information with us, feel free to do that there. With that, we'll go ahead and go into the next slide, Maddie, and go through some quick introductions. Perfect. So my name is Caitlin Koyama, for any of you who I don't know, and I am the Cal Poly campus recruiter for PwC. Being the campus recruiter pretty much means I'm your go-to person for anything PwC. So whether you're looking for internships, full-time roles, if you want to be based in San Francisco or if you want to be based in Florida, I'm still your go-to person because you are a Cal Poly student. So happy to answer any questions you have from the recruiting side, as well as if it's line of service specific or anything like that. You can definitely coordinate chats and discussions with other professionals as well to give you all information about that. But happy to be here today and appreciate you all spending a little bit of Friday with us. And with that, I will pass it over to Marina.
Thank you, Caitlin. My name is Marina Rangilova. I'm a director in our data analytics practice, which is in technology consulting. I've been with the firm for 10 years. I've been doing consulting in the same area for 15 years. I came as an international student in a different school, and I did my graduate studies in mathematics and computer science. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Awesome. Sidich, take it away.
Yeah, I'm Sidich. I'm an associate in the cybersecurity, privacy, and forensics team out of San Francisco. I graduated from Cal Poly, so I'm an alum a little over a year ago, and I've been at the firm for 7 years. So learning a lot. It's been a lot of really good journey, short, been really awesome. I got a degree in business accounting finance. I also double majored in poli-sci. So a little bit of different background than cybersecurity and technology, but all comes together. I was heavily involved in business school, different clubs, and just throughout campus. So it's good to see some familiar faces.
Awesome. And Maddie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maddie. I'm on the campus recruiting team, so I get to work closely with Caitlin. And I sit in Portland, Oregon, and I've been at the firm for 2 years now.
Awesome. So you'll see we already have a breadth of different backgrounds here. So schools, office locations, majors, things like that. So really just shows, I think, that no matter what you want to do at PwC, we're a lot more than just an accounting firm. We are a professional services firm. So have a lot of different opportunities for all y'all, especially from the consulting side. So with that, Maddie, would you mind going to the next slide? Thank y'all. So this is a quick just overview about PwC, some of our main topics that we always like to touch on, what makes us different. So PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, you'll hear as we go through the presentation today, we love acronyms. So if we ever say an acronym you're unsure of, just let us know. PwC, we're one of the big four accounting firms, like I said, so you will hear our name a lot of the time with Deloitte, KPMG, and EY. We do have a very large network, over 276,000 partners, principals, and staff across the world, and then specifically in the US, a little bit over 50,000 people. So very, very big firm to work on, which just shows there's a lot of opportunities available to you as well. Like we said, on the right-hand side, we do provide assurance, advisory, and tax services to our clients. And we're proud to say that 429 of the Fortune 500 companies are our clients. So in some way or another, one of those big companies is probably connected to PwC. So whether we help them with their tax return, whether we audit their financial statements, or if they've come to us as consultants having questions and wanting to merge different groups together or acquire a company, we're involved in a lot of those big transactions as well. Other just little things about us, you'll see in that bottom left. So we're also proud to be one of the top 100 most valuable brands. So a lot of the times our employees always joke, they go on vacation, they go into the airport and they see a PwC logo, or they see someone with a backpack or a t-shirt, or they see the building. So we are all over the place, very recognizable brand. We work on with the Oscars as well. So that little floozy a few years ago that happened, but we do continue to work on that account. So you'll see our name come up in a lot of different ways. And then that middle one is something we're also very proud of. So Access Your Potential, or AYP, is our $320 million investment corporate responsibility project that we're on. So not only donating money, but also time to focus on closing the opportunity gap between underrepresented minorities, low-income areas, and students. So really helping them through mentorship and coaching. Here, specifically in San Francisco, we work a lot with AYP through the YMCA groups, junior achievement, things like that. So we'll go into classrooms and for younger students, teach them to save. So what's a piggy bank? Where do you put your allowance? How do you save money? And then up for older students who are maybe in high school and preparing to go to college, like how do you apply for a loan? How best should you save for college? What things should you really know? So really trying to help everyone be financially literate over a lot of different aspects. And then something that bottom right that really hits home right now, obviously, the reason we are not with you in person at the Consulting Club meeting is because of COVID. So we're proud to say as well, we've donated over $3.5 million through PwC Charitable Foundation to coronavirus-related grants, whether that's helping any professionals of ours who have been impacted negatively by COVID, helping our communities, giving back our time as well as resources to the health industry to help them too. So really proud to say that that's something that even over just the last few months has really taken action quickly for us. So I will pass it off, I believe, to Sidich to go through kind of overview about advisory and consulting, why y'all are here.
Sure, yeah. So I like to think that advisory is just a really big hard to define bubble, other than maybe saying that like our job at the end of the day is to take a client's problem and help them kind of find a solution either to what they're looking for or to finding different ways, or like our motto is like solving complex problems for clients. That's just kind of our overarching as a firm what we want to do. And I think that all the different teams and all the different individuals I've met here, either the people I work with or the people who are just in different branches of advisory that you'll see, we all like are coming together and like kind of finding ways to create valuable and like strategic solutions, as well as just like giving back to our own clients and really kind of making their business, making their people smarter, better, and overall just like getting to where they need to go. Like we have, it's a very, even though we are an accounting firm and we have a very like large audit, tax history and just teams, we still have over 15,000 consultants who make up all the different types of advisory and consulting like teams and solutions, and they oftentimes work together. And we kind of have like a go-to-market kind of strategy where we take different individuals from different parts or just with different backgrounds, and they will come together and make certain types of solutions. And you go on the website, I don't even know all the solutions. There's so many different ways they approach clients and with their problems. And they kind of say, we're going to go to market with this skill set, this type of information, and try to help them like help these clients approach their problems in this way. And it always, like, I don't think any problem is, especially at this level, is simple, right? If it was simple, they probably wouldn't seek outside help. I think that's where when we're like having our specific niches, as well as just so many different, we help solve like continuously, like we may start by solving one, but we'll start like from help and connect with our dash. For one, I think so many different work with individuals all over the world. Like we are at PwC USA, but we're also PwC across the world. And like I've been in like different teams where we have individuals out of China or India or Tokyo, or some even kind of come over. Like some people want to switch around, and that's a great way. I think if you're ever interested in maybe starting here, but maybe exploring a different kind of path somewhere else, like there's always different opportunities to do that. And like I said, it's very broad. And what I mean by broad is like there's so many different things we do. Like I've come to the firm in 7 months. I realized there's so many different things that we do. I didn't realize that there were such problems out there that certain companies have, and like that there's actually ways to even solve them. Like it's really opened my eyes, and it's like something that you think of. I'm pretty sure PwC will probably have a way of doing it, and things that you've never heard of that we do, we actually do. And it's come in so many different ways. Like we are a large Big Four accounting consulting firm, but we work with large teams, work with teams. We're constantly trying to find different ways to be better and rethink. I think Caitlin, on one of the other slides, had mentioned how we are really big into investing in ourselves, and we're continuously always like it's almost like a mandatory. We want you to learn, and we want you to like train yourself. Like one of the things that actually is happening right now in the consulting advisory team is we're all required, or basically required, to take a learning day, and that's like a firm-wide like here's 4 days, work with your team, take a day, and like there are all these different like things that we offer to kind of either we approach problems, be more efficient, just new technical skills. It's all about that. It's a whole day of learning, and it's something that's happening all throughout like the year, all throughout our careers. And I think like that's one thing that really brought me, is that we're always working in different ways, and always finding different ways to be better and grow. And so like what I'll say is like some different teams may align themselves in very specific kind of industries, and some may be all industries. So I know cybersecurity, privacy, and forensics, we work with all different types of clients. So I currently am working on a banking client. In the past, I've worked on the consumer markets, I've worked in utilities, I've worked in tech, and I think because we're such a large firm with so many different clients, especially at least out in the West Coast, we have a lot of tech clients, we have a lot of consumer markets, we have a lot of pharmaceuticals, but it comes down to like if you're interested in working with different types of clients, different industries, there's always an opportunity with some team and somewhere. We don't just focus on one. We have focuses everywhere. I think that was a really big selling point. Like I could always find something new to learn, some new clients to work with, some new different teams and new skills. I think So not all, a lot of skills are transferable from client to client, but a lot of times you have to understand the different types of businesses and industries. And I think that's one of the like the really key points, that you get to always try new things, always try working in different industries, different clients. Or if you're really like, I want to be health services, I got a minor in biology or something, I really want to work with business and biology. I know actually someone who did that, and she is working with a health services client who's really needed right now given the world we work on. And like there's always different ways where you never know how PwC is always involved in what's going on. I think now Marina, right?
Yep, I waited for the cue. Hi, everybody. So advisory is really our consulting practice, right? The reason we say the word advisory is because it's the way we approach consulting. We want to be trusted advisors of our clients. We want to listen to their problems and understand what is on their mind, what keeps them up at night, right? And accordingly come up with solutions. Either we pull people from different, and you can see here, well, I'll throw a few terminologies, different competencies, different horizontals, different verticals, but ultimately we like to solve problems. That's why we're in consulting. Now, sometimes we might not be the right choice, but we will also be creative in figuring out and help the client throughout the decision making and while solving if we're not the people solving the problem. So what we do is we do strategy through execution, as Kijit mentioned earlier. So we start with something like more, we can start with something more like very high level strategy consulting. You know, I guess project where strategy and experts and Alan comes and works with the executives and figures out capabilities which we give differentiating advantage of the business. Once you define where your business wants to go, you have to start executing. You have current state, you have a target state. How do you bring the business to that target state? That's why management consulting comes and works with the business and comes up with the way to go to the end state. Technology consulting works with management consulting and provides the tools for the business to be efficient in their work. Now, what we notice is that it really helps when people are focused on particular industries. That's why we have this industry verticals. So when I go to a client, I'm specifically focused on power utilities. I know exactly how they run the business. I know exactly what their problems are day to day. I know exactly who their competitors are in a way, what they, how they measure up to their competitors or companies at similar size. So that definitely helps a lot. So when you're thinking about PwC, you really have to think about opportunities across this management consulting, strategy consulting, technology consulting, verticals, horizontals. You don't have to worry about the verticals. This is something comes much later. Also, we have cross-industry verticals, which is, the work is the same, like deals. No matter what the industry is, the work and the type of work we do is the same, so we don't have to, be industry specific. The same is for organizational transformations. It's always the same. Thank you. Sorry, work in progress. So that being said, can we in each horizontals we have competencies. So for example, technology consulting, I'm in the data analytics competency. That's more like people focus on particular type of technology consulting. But other competency could be application in emerging technology, cloud computing and network, enterprise IT architecture. And then we have big alliances with big vendors like Microsoft, Oracle, Salesforce, SAP, Workday. We implement their products where they go to implementers. Next slide, please. So what does it take for us to be successful in technology consulting? As a consulting club, you know that you have to like people, right? You have to like people, listen to their problems, be a shoulder to cry on, and then also, be able to message how you're going to solve those problems. So technology, a lot of people think about, oh, I have to know the latest and greatest. And yes, you always have to be a step ahead of your clients, you know, the latest trends about latest technology, and think how you apply those to the needs of your clients within the particular. Also, you have to follow what does it mean, this, what is happening in the world? What does it mean for the business and the people I'm working for? What does it mean in terms of technology? How can we bring the technology to solve those problems? So I'm sure a lot of you have been thinking, what can we do with coronavirus and the change of life? How can we improve maybe our studies, or how can we you know, improve the way we track our interactions with people, and we stay safe and our family stays safe, right? So PwC has invested in a lot of different apps which help with those things. You know, we're following what is happening, and we're thinking ahead, and we're ahead, and we have a point of view, and we're discussing those with our clients. Now, you can see some of the preferred majors for technology consulting, but I would like to say that it's really being analytical. If you are quick in learning software, you know, this is easy. It's really being analytical, understanding how to solve problems, how to message to different groups. Very often you will be talking to the IT from execution perspective, and you can geek out on the greatest technology and everything, which sounds so sexy right now. But you have to be mindful what is really applicable for the client, what really makes sense. Every client has different maturity. They cannot always have the latest and greatest technology. It doesn't make sense for them. So when you're talking to the business or the executives, you have to message accordingly, right? So if you think about technology consulting, is you have to have the technical acumen, you have to have the business acumen, you have to have the global acumen, and then you have to be, you know, a good leader and understand in what context what to message. So I'm going to pause here if there are any questions in the chat related to that. Okay. So, Caitlin, I don't know whether you want me to highlight the opportunities for summer internships and the graduations, or to leave it to you or Maddie, I guess. Okay.
I can talk about cybersecurity, privacy, and forensics. So kind of along the lines of just how, like, thinking about just where the world is, like the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, technology has grown and changed, and it went from a lot of companies trying to understand it to it being the ins and outs of a lot of businesses, and then having such an impact in like the normal daily life of an average individual. And like if you think of just some of the biggest headlines we've had the last couple of weeks and the last couple of years, you think about like TikTok and the data like kind of concerns with that, or even Facebook and GDPR in the last couple of years. And one of the biggest things that we've done is kind of help companies understand potential privacy and security threats, and helping make sure that like that their systems and their processes are really protecting themselves and protecting their consumers, right? Like at the end of the day, like if you are going to not necessarily put your consumer data, you're going to have less consumers, you're going to have less trust in your businesses. And that's one of the biggest things businesses and companies, especially large brands, want to rely on, is the trust that consumers have on them. And I think that's something that we as a whole team, so a little background is that before, up until actually July 1st of this year, cybersecurity privacy was one team, and forensics consulting, forensics technology was another team. And we all we did some distinct, but we all had a very similar goal. We were helping clients like mitigate risk, protect themselves, protect their consumers, and be compliant with regulations. And forensics is a team that's historically been very strongly, and most of the work is either compliance based or investigation based, or some little deals and overall strategy work. And then technology, which is one of the least regulated industries out there, but is rapidly changing and growing, and it's gained a lot of regulation. I think coming together, we kind of work together in a lot of different ways to help understand a business's like challenges, the potential risks, as well as like when they go through change, like how do you do that change? And a lot of times, especially with so much technology involved in the business, it requires different aspects. So if you look at the preferred majors, you'll see that there's very distinct, very like two separate branches. You see computer science and computer engineering, and then you see some business-oriented ones like information systems, quantitative analysis, and even accounting and finance, which is specifically my background. And I work with tech people every day. I couldn't there's a reason why I did accounting. I didn't do computer science. I couldn't do it. but a lot of those individuals, like especially within an unregulated world of technology, but it's continuously being regulated, there's just a need to kind of bridge the gaps. And we do a lot of different side of that. At the end of the day, our goal is to help enhance consumer trust. That's kind of like one of the biggest things. We want to help make sure that a company is best situated to respond to threats and vulnerabilities. You think about, so finance classes, and one of the biggest talking points is risk, and how do you have a lower, like how do you have a higher risk aversion that does have just overall lower risk, right? Like that's a lot of what we do. It's not just maybe your balance statement. It's a lot of just your overall business processes. And kind of how we talked about earlier, so we have go-to-market team. So the way we kind of get ourselves within this vertical is a deals team. We work on like kind of like think of an M&A, but like instead of like the front end where you're coming together, making a deal, doing your transfer pricing, we do a lot of the back end where you're actually separating or combining, carving out whatever it is. We do a lot of like implementation of that, compliance of that, a lot of making sure that like what's actually agreed upon is actually what happens. And then we just do a lot of threat management. So making sure that like either we help with investigations, we do a lot of very specific, we've done some really big ones where we help a company that's been either have had some accusations of fraud or actually had some employees who have committed fraud. We get hired by a client, we get hired by a regulator, whatever it is. We do a lot of investigations. But we also do a lot of just compliance work for some, especially for some big companies and tech companies around here who have international different rules to follow, a lot of different vendors or just markets that they're in that have different rules than the United States or even within our own country. A lot of times you have to understand how to really structure your business and structure your processes to do that. And then some other stuff we do, which is really kind of, I think the combination of the two teams really sits in strategy, risk, and compliance, where we're understanding what is a risk, what is a company doing on their business, their technology side, how do we make sure they're compliant, but also not just by regulations, but compliant by what's best for the customer and consumer. And then once we kind of figured out what's the best way, we'll look at implementation and operations team. We'll kind of go in and do whatever sort of network and security and stuff like that needs to be done. There's a huge range. There's so many different things I'm still learning on what they do. And then overall assessments of kind of what's happening in terms of the information, the governance, and how is it really, like, is it what you're trying to do is actually what's kind of happening? And it's just a lot of continuous projects, a lot of continuous targets, and you can never be safe enough, right? And a lot of times you have to make sure, like, especially like we're still at a very tipping point. We never know where technology is going to take us, and like you can never be too safe with a customer's like privacy and their personal data. So available opportunities, I know we'll talk more about that. So, but there are some internships coming up, which I highly recommend. I got to do one and I had a really great time. It brought me back to them.
I just want to say that I hate to say that, maybe the recruiters will get upset with me, but when you're looking at the big fours in terms of consulting, in terms of capabilities, we're very similar. What is really important if you're making decision is the culture about the company. And while it's great for you to understand what kind of types of projects we do, what capabilities we have, it's really a great way to taste our culture through an internship. And that culture works for me. I mean, I came from a small consulting. I've been with the firm for 10 years. I love the fact that it really allows you to drive your career. We are not very hierarchical. When somebody calls me and says, "Can I talk to your boss?" and I start laughing because we are structured in a way. We are just a competence, have a leader of the competency. I guess he's my boss, but when I'm on a project, it's very different. So we don't have a very defined hierarchy. We have coaches, we have relationship leaders. It's all about relationships, all about advice, all about connection. And we're sharing information so easily. If somebody says, "I would like to learn that," I'm like, you know what? I have materials. I have done this. Let me share that with you. Knowledge sharing is so common. So it's really something you have to think about is the culture, what fits. Some of you might like something more structured, very military, very defined. I love PwC culture. You're driving, we will be like a round table. We'll have partners, we have associates in between, and everybody has a voice, right? We like diversity. Not only diversity of people, but diversity of thoughts, people with different backgrounds. We hate echo chambers, right? Because good ideas come when you have this diversity of thought, right? Sorry for the plug.
No, that's great. I 100% echo that.
That was a great plug. Thank you for tossing that in there. And next we have our Capital Markets Accounting and Advisory Services, also known as CMAS. CMAS is of our deals team. They work with clients who are going through an acquisition, IPO, and help with navigating new reporting standards. CMAS works closely with audit teams and is considered the consulting side of the deals group. For this group, we're looking for CPA eligible candidates upon graduation, and we do have internship opportunities available. And next we have financial due diligence, which is very similar to CMAS, and these two groups work closely together along with the valuations team, which we'll talk about next. Financial due diligence specializes in merger and acquisition transactions and also helps with complex accounting standards as well as some IPO. And similar to CMAS, we are looking for CPA eligible candidates and also have internship opportunities available. And then with our valuations team, it's also a part of the deals group, but is the finance side. So they work with similar clients and transactions as CMAS and financial due diligence, but you do need to be a finance major to qualify. And if you have questions on these specific lines of services, then we do have lines of service office hours coming up next week, which I'll talk about later. And then this slide gives us an overview of all available positions we have that we also recruit for at Cal Poly. So you can go to this link and read a little bit more on the positions that we have available just to get a little bit more background. And this is also where you would submit your application. We don't require a cover letter, it's just a resume. And just a quick reminder that our application deadline is this Tuesday. So if you're looking to apply, please apply before midnight Eastern time this Tuesday. And if you do have questions about the application process or things you want to talk with Caitlin about before you submit your application, she is holding office hours on Monday and Tuesday next week. So here is again Caitlin's email if you want to reach out to her directly with any questions. And you can also, this is your next opportunity to, and your last opportunity to scan this QR code if you want to be a part of our mailing list, or if you want more information on how you can attend these events we have coming up next week. That will include getting the link for Caitlin's recruiting office hours, and then also for our line of service office hours. Our line of service office hours will also help you if you want to kind of differentiate the groups a little bit and kind of see what you want to apply to before our application deadline later that day.
Maddie, there's a question for Tuesday. If it's the deadline for the internship too in the chat.
Yes, so this is the deadline for all of our open positions. Thank you. I can't see the chat when I'm sharing my screen.
That's why I'm helping. That's right. Yeah,
Thank you.
You're presenting. Yeah.
But yes, that's the application deadline for all positions. Remember, it's midnight Eastern time, so it'll be 9 o'clock Pacific. And just so you all know, you probably noticed on the last slide, but we don't have any open full-time advisory roles that we're currently recruiting for. And that is across the nation. That's not just the Bay Area Northwest market. Is there any other questions anybody has?
I want people to ask questions more around things which around consulting and you're the consulting club. Anything you know, maybe you had other presentations by other vendors. Something which resonated with you with other vendors, or resonated with you when we were sharing. Just let us know. We would like to deep dive a little bit more.
Yeah, I have a quick question. So from the presentation, I kind of gathered that PwC is looking more for accounting and finance concentrations. So for someone who might not be going into accounting or finance, what are some of the consulting opportunities that PwC offers?
So we actually do have different majors that we are recruiting for. So if we look back at a couple of our past slides, we are looking for different majors such as computer engineering, computer science, quantitative analytics, And we do have a few different options of different majors if you're looking into going into consulting at PwC. Just because some people do come in with an accounting and finance background, that's not necessarily a requirement or a preferred major for a lot of our different consulting roles. So if you wanted to take a look at our link right here at this website that shows all of our roles, when you click on a certain position that you're looking at, it will give you details on different majors that we're looking for. And there is a lot of different options, not just with accounting and finance background. It's a
Okay,
good
great.
question.
Thank you.
What is your background? What is your major?
I am still pretty undecided for now, but I am leaning towards marketing as my focus. But I'm also interested in finance, so it's kind of I'm not quite sure yet.
Yeah, I'll add, like, one of my colleagues is not from Cal Poly, but from, I want to say UCLA, I think. And they have a marketing analytics kind of background. I know Cal Poly has a lot of the marketing is actually analytics classes, and like they do just a lot of, at least for us, like some high level data as well as just some overall business understanding. I think what I like, it just depends on the team. You have to have maybe certain the kind of fundamentals, but I think a lot of times, like, you'll learn a lot more. Like, I've learned a ton in the few months I've been here that I would have never learned from school, but I needed to be able to do some of the things I do. So like there's a huge like opportunity. Like, I don't think there's really too many majors that wouldn't have an opportunity at the firm.
Okay, thank you.
I have go ahead, Noah.
I have two quick questions. The first is, the majors that you guys have listed for those roles, are those required, or are those like the preferred majors that you guys are looking for?
Those are the preferred majors, but not necessarily a requirement. If you have a different background that also fits you into that group, then we still consider other majors. Those are just the main ones that we were looking for initially.
Okay. And then my other question is, you mentioned that you guys are not recruiting for full-time under advisory. Is that because most of the advisory interns get full-time offers in return, so there just aren't open positions?
Yes, so that is mostly due to the fact that we just had a really successful previous recruiting season where, yes, like you said, interns received full-time offers and the vast majority of them accepted, which made it so that we didn't have any full-time roles available for this year.
And I just want to say that PwC hasn't laid off anybody during COVID-19. We've been taking care of our resources. We have honored every offer we have given, and we gave a lot of offers for interns and new hires. So because of that, we're a little bit more conservative. We want to make sure that everybody is taken care of before we bring somebody else on board, and we see how markets are. So that's the approach we're taking.
It looks like, Kevin, you have your hand raised, so go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I noticed that, a lot of the positions such as like tech consulting kind of have a preference and a background in technology or, computer science information systems. And I'm assuming that's because, there are certain features with like some of these that we have to understand. But I want to know, is it a preference because you want us to have like a certain method of thinking or a certain skill set, and like how soon into like the role do we apply certain skills, like that we learn certain coding languages, or is it more of the methodology of like how we think?
So let's say we have a lot of diversity in terms of educational background in technology. I had a director who was leading our testing in QA group, who was in liberal arts. So I think it was art history, right? So it is really the approach, but sometimes the way when we look at resumes, right, is how do we know that you understand, you're passionate about technology? Let's say you are a finance major, but you really like data and you like to play with it, do different visualizations. So if you have done a project, whether it is for curriculum or something personally, just list it in your resume. Show us that you have inclination to work with data, so we can kind of notice that, right? Even if it's not the major you expect somebody to be working with data, right?
Thank you.
I had a quick question just on like trends that you guys have noticed like within the tech industry. What do you like post COVID, hopefully that soon, but who knows really, what are you guys are most excited about in terms of like technology innovation, whether it be new or existing companies that are leading these initiatives?
You want to take it, Deb?
No, I think you're better suited for this one.
So definitely some of the emerging technologies like drones, obviously, imagine complex delivery, right? Would be cool. But some of the we have in PwC, we have something called PwC Digital. We are building our own applications. Also, we have another group, which is PwC Labs, which we're really working with all this emerging technology, and people are playing. It's like a playground. It's an internal group. It's not consulting group. It's an internal group playground. We are ahead of the curve. Our clients, we're trying the new technology, and we're seeing how we can implement it in their needs. But what we've been doing is we have been building different apps which can help us deliver remotely different programs and projects. For example, we have apps which we have made available to clients too, which provides very good gauging of the workforce digital acumen. So okay, if we're working remotely and we have to bring all this technology to our workforce so we can continue, running business, what is our acumen? What do we need to do to understand, the gaps and catch up on that so people can use the technology we're investing for remote work? Also, we have another app which we've been building, which is around, the contact. What kind of contacts you have, where you go, tracking. Especially if somebody gets tested positive, what does it mean for all the interactions that person has had? So, in a way, we have groups which are focused, on things coming and how ahead of the curve, how it impacts people. But also, for example, a lot of companies right now are focusing on how do we get cash very quickly. So I work very closely with a group which does Fit for Growth, which is strategic consulting. And we build different pre-built policies very quickly where we can go to a client and within 2 weeks can figure out where the potential savings, cost cutting, and find the cash quickly so they can continue keeping the lights on it. So we build predefined position analytics solutions in a way.
I think one thing I'll just kind of add in this a little bit, maybe more on the personal experience side. Like I think being in a professional services industry and at a firm like PwC, I think we're very much at the forefront of adoption and implementing as much necessary and like potential technology that we want to need. Like one of the things I did early in training, we were like, oh, did you know we have a PwC drones team? I was like, that's like, and I like realized there's so many different ways a business would need some sort of like operations behind it. Like I think about just how the world switched so fast in March, where we went from everything was normal, we were maybe dealing with a pandemic, to now we're fully remote, haven't seen the inside of an office in 6 months. And like a lot of businesses were ready for that, but I don't think anybody was truly prepared to be able to make that kind of switch. And like just given how in the last 10 years we've done more technology than the 50 years before that, maybe, right? Like one of the partners I work with, he's very big in the saying that like we're just at a tipping point of like we never know where technology is going to explode, and if you're not, you can't predict every single technology implemented before it's there, but it comes down to, are you ready to take it on? And sometimes it's just like, I think one of the biggest things that I'm seeing is that people are much more receptive of like new unknown like technology, and like find different ways to know it, understand it, and when it's feasible, like using it.
Yeah, we have a PwC IoT solution. We call it connected solution. So we definitely have a lab where people are playing, and I've seen videos of them playing and trying things and then discussing how to implement them and where we can invest and what makes sense for us with our professional services.
Thank you.
I have a question about recruiting. with going along with COVID, since everything's virtual this fall, are you guys changing anything with recruiting other than just maybe doing interviews over Zoom? Is there any ways that you've edited your recruiting process?
So we actually have been doing our interviews virtually for a couple of years now. So that hasn't been a change for us. We implemented that previously. So that's actually kind of nice that we don't have to change yet another thing in this current world. But I think really just the biggest change is all of these events are virtual. You kind of miss out on that, like, because kind of like you said before with our culture, like that's how you really see that is when you have these personal interactions with people. So I think we're trying really hard because I think that's something that at PwC we're really proud of. Like our culture is awesome and we have so many great things that make us who we are. And so I think trying to show that through these virtual events has been our biggest adjustment for sure.
I'm just gonna add, so like I started right before COVID like became like the big thing for everybody. Like I started in February, so I was inside an office for 5 weeks. And so like, but I know a lot of like one of my close colleagues who just graduated from Cal Poly, he started a month ago. But like, and PwC is really big on like meeting everybody. We're really big on like your coaches, your buddies, your connectivity partners. Like they're all very receptive. They're all always time. One thing I would really like, I think I'm really proud and like glad I came to this firm is because like even in the virtual environment, like everybody still wants that, like not just like out of the sake of like not being alone, but like they genuinely want to like keep up with their colleagues, be connected. And like I think the only difference I would say is that instead of going for coffee at like a coffee shop, we're still doing it virtually at the same times that we had planned on. Or like we still do the very cheesy happy hours even 6 months in when it's kind of the same thing. Like I saw like people are coming up with some pretty creative solutions, and I think that's one of the biggest things that you get to miss out is like getting to do those type of like in-personal events and really develop those interpersonal relationships. But I think PwC is doing as best as it can, like given all the limitations and like trying its best, really welcoming who are our employees and who are our future employees. Like I think, like I feel confident like we can do what we can to like connect and meet with people as much as it's possible being remote.
Thanks. You just mentioned that the firm has invested a lot in building digital acumen in everybody in the firm, even executive assistants. So that being said, that helped a lot. Unfortunately, when things happened and we had to work virtually, because of that and because we have the software, we had the knowledge, it was very smooth selling for us that way to still being able to deliver to clients and actually help clients set up, the remote delivery. So there's a question for you, Maddie. Can you speak about the type of questions asked during PwC recruiting process? I think it's more the type of interviewing. So whether it's case, behavioral, I have an answer, but I'll let you answer that.
You can actually go ahead and start. You have the advisory in interview experience.
Yes, I do a lot of advisory. So we do both. We do behavioral and case study. And, for the case study, just if you have questions, how do we prepare? Just, work with somebody, solve problems. There are no wrong answers. We want to listen how you analyze the problem, how you assimilate information provided to you, and how you work with that information. The only thing is when you're giving an answer, make sure you provide your thought process behind it. It's like a math test. If you just give the answer, you don't get the full credit. You have to show the steps, right? The same thing. So we understand. Feel free to ask clarifying questions if something is not clear. We have to make sure you understood the information provided properly. It's an interview, but it's two ways, right? And believe me, at the end, you'll have a lot of fun if you haven't done it.
Yeah, I actually, so like when I interviewed 2 years ago, I think I did a case, and I think I can tell you for a fact, having worked, I did come across the same problem in the real world, and my solution when I had first was absolutely wrong. But I think I talked to the interviewer after and I asked for feedback, and they said it comes down to like the way you're thinking, the way you're presenting, the way you're communicating. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong with asking questions, and there's nothing like wrong with like trying to like learn on the spot, as well as like it comes down to like, can your individual who's interviewing you understand how you came up with that solution? There's no way, like in college, like I went to Cal Poly, like I loved my education there, but they're not going to teach you very niche and specific consulting solutions that you need, right? But Cal Poly definitely taught me like how to approach a problem and how to solve it. That's the motto, right? Like learn by doing it. It comes down to like, how are you like approaching a problem? How are you assessing certain situations, and how are you presenting that? And and I think the best way to think about it is you're approaching a conversation about a potential problem a client's having, and you're just kind of maybe running down solutions, understanding what's going on. Like I think really approach it with that like conversational, but trying to display how you're thinking, your strengths behind it.
And yes, Kshitish, you're right. We try to do our case studies exactly the way a real life, in consulting is depicted. So we kind of role play a little bit, or at least I like to role play. I was not a theater major, but I like to do that. So one thing is, I'm sure your answer was not wrong. So what happens is when you get on a project, you get much more information than what you get on your interview.
Yeah.
And everybody could be a Monday quarterback when they have more information and they had enough time to make the analysis, right?
Oh, absolutely. You have Google when you get to real work.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys so much for answering all of those questions. It's almost 12, so I just wanted to give our members the opportunity to maybe ask one or two more questions if they have them. So does anyone have any more questions?
I do.
Okay.
So I know that we talked a lot about like the tech consulting aspect, but I was wondering if you can elaborate more on like the management consulting program that PwC offers.
So I think with management consulting, I think if you wanted to attend the line of service office hours on Tuesday, if you wanted to scan this QR code that's on the screen, there will be people from management consulting there that work in their day-to-day that will be able to really give you more of a background and kind of give you a little more detail on what you're looking for there.
Okay, thank you.
If we have time, I have one really quick question. I was wondering how much flexibility you guys have in working with other groups, meaning how many strategy projects you've been on, or whether you have that flexibility to hop around different groups based on your desires or likings.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So I currently actually am not staffed on a CPNF, cybersecurity, privacy, and forensics project. I'm working on a huge, the background is we're working on a CARES Act PPP project. So it's a really big push the firm is doing. We're helping with something that's really in the world of COVID. And it's technically financial services or FDD kind of project. And we're helping a bank. And I'm working with a Salesforce team at PwC. I'm working with a finance team. I'm working with like multiple different like cybersecurity individuals, and then having like more of my accounting finance background, like I'm working with a lot of like the compliance regulations. Like we're working on a huge virtual like think about it, before COVID, like PPP SBA loans weren't really like a big headline, and then we had to do it all virtually, big implementation. We were implementing like a very fairly low regulated technology solution versus one of the most regulated industry out there, banking. And so like I'm working every day. I'm working with strategy people. I'm working with deals. I'm working with tech. It's a collaborative thing, and it's under like a financial services project. And I think the one thing that the firm really, really stresses is like a cross line of services work. Like there's like it is always welcome. And it is always like it's considered the same work, even if you're doing it at like a different team. Like we're all different solutions with different technical capabilities. Like if it comes to solving client's problem, we'll tap whoever resources we need to. And I've out of the 8 months I've been here, 6 of them I've been on like projects involved a wide variety of different teams. I think that's a very typical thing to have like at any point in your career. Like you're working with different people and you have the opportunity to meet other individuals and like follow that path. Like the first project led to my current project because of like working in that team, and I'm still using the skills that I'm supposed to have for my team, but I'm specifically using them on this project.
So to answer the question around specific, how often you do strategy or implementations, we try to do strategy through implementations, right? And just because we strategy, the strategy consulting people that I'm in technology consulting, depending on the focus of strategy, the stakeholders, we do strategy through implementations. Sometimes we're pulled, just to do the implementation, but we have a good mixture, right? Very different skill sets required for the different types of projects, very different durations, very different, deadlines, right? So depending, what your availability is when you start and what your skill sets are and what the needs are, you get staffed on one or the other and you get exposed to both at one time, sooner or later. But in general, if we do a very big, strategy consulting project to start with, and then we do the implementation, we end up with very big programs, as Kshijit mentioned, where we have a lot of competency across different horizontals, across line of services, tax assurance people, and we do huge programs like that. This is the best. We bring our skill sets together and help the clients.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, it is 12:03. Sorry if we went a little bit over. Thank you, PwC, so much for coming. If anyone has any questions, I will stick around until the last person leaves. If you have any Cal Poly Consulting Club questions, or really anything that you want to ask, I'll stick around. PwC, I don't know if you guys have things planned, you're more than welcome to stick around too until everyone leaves, but if you have to go, that is totally okay. And yeah, it looks like Marina just dropped her email in the chat. So make sure that you look at that if you need to reach out for any questions.
Yeah, please. If you want information interviews or anything, also you can ping me on LinkedIn if it's easier, but I'm available. And I hate to say goodbye. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank
I can stay
you.
for a couple of seconds if there's any one-on-one
Thank you.
question anybody wants to ask.
Perfect.
I've dropped my email as well. So
does anyone have a question that they would like to ask, maybe with less people on here now, or if you're too embarrassed to ask it, you can send me a private message.
feel free. I consider myself an open book, and I graduated 13 months ago, so I understand a lot of the very recent like recruiting and all the pressures and stuff like that. So
what was something you didn't exactly learn in college that you kind of had to learn for your own, like?
I can that's a long list, man. Don't so I wouldn't say I learned. I do learn on my own. I'm not gonna say like I'm a big news reader, but PwC is like one of the slides that we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars into learning capabilities. It's from like specific, really nasty accounting rules all the way to like the drones and the IoT of technology. Like there's so many different things, and what I'll say is like if you don't know something, I can specifically say PwC very much is like a big pusher of like get to learn it. I think one specific thing I got to learn, so Cal Poly is into you should learn Excel, and I absolutely think you should learn Excel. I still spend most of my day on Excel, but one thing I learned was there's a tool called Alteryx, which is it's kind of like there's an analogy, I'm forgetting what it is, but it's basically Excel on steroids, where you could do multiple different Excel things, and then you do just a little bit of like tweaking on like on a technology and analytical level, and you do things that Excel couldn't even dream of doing. And if you basically, have any of you ever done like a massive Excel project and your computer sounds like it's about to take off? It would handle that with ease. Like some of the solutions, it's called Alteryx. You could search it up. I don't know if it's available for consumer download, but I took some crazy government classes and I didn't need it for that. But what I'll say is like I got to like that was something I learned. I got to learn different ways of data manipulation and find different ways. Like one of the projects kind of the background is, so I'm working on a PPP project. If you look it up, part of the CARES Act, which gave the stimulus checks and just overall COVID funding, included $650 billion of small business loans. One of the banks I work on is implementing billions of dollars of these loans. Imagine how much transactional data, imagine how many millions of lines of just numbers and digits and information that's on there, right? Excel wouldn't be able to handle that. Like it's a great tool. Excel was a very powerful tool. Still will probably be for many years the number one used tool. But you couldn't handle millions of lines of data on that. The Alteryx would be able to do whatever manipulation it do outside of the include on top of the more like Excel has, and do much faster, much easily, and much more where I need to go. So that was one big tool I will recommend. Is it comes down to like, are you open to learning? It's like I don't think learning stops the day you graduate. Like, and I think that's one of the big examples I've gotten to use.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Between you and us, how like I guess how happy are you to working at PwC? Like how happy are you to be like on a more average day-to-day basis? Are you happy to be working there? And then how satisfied and inspired are you the projects you get to work on?
Yeah, between you and me, 100%. I have no regrets, no doubts. So I'll give you a little bit more background. So I was heavily involved in CPAC, and I was on the board of CPAC for a couple of years. So I know the ins and outs of almost all those firms, especially the big advisory consulting firms. And like knowing all the ins and outs, I chose PwC, and I haven't had a day where like it is very flexible. It is very adaptive. They were very forefront on, and still are very much on like what's the priority of the employees. Like they're very big, very, very big on diversity, very, very big on like individual growth. Like there's so many different things that I'd never, like if you create a checklist of like, my checklist when I was looking is like, what are some things I want out of my career? For me, it was growth. It was like, I'm personally not in, like, I'm of a diverse background, but I'm not involved in D&I. But I wanted a firm that was on the forefront of D&I because I like knowing that there's people who around me who have different experiences and different backgrounds, and I could learn from them. I wanted a firm that would like was really big on feedback, that was really big on growth opportunity, and helping me. Like it's like we have performance evaluations, but they're not like performance evaluations. They're more like, where are you right now and how can we get you? And that's a consistent conversation that happens every month. And the last thing, it was like, if I want to pivot my career, is there opportunity for me to still do within PwC? Do I not have to like, because the accounting firms, it's like 2 years and you're out. It's kind of like the big model sometimes. And I think PwC, that's still a big thing. But those were my 5 things, and checked every single box without question compared to any of them. So like,
that's awesome.
So like, again, I would recommend PwC for anybody who's interested, but I will also like say the caveat, it comes down to, is that the firm that you would want to be at? Like it is a people culture kind of place, and that's all the firms are. It comes down to, where is your culture? Where is your alignment?
All right, thank you.
I had a quick question. Do you see yourself staying and like going within PwC, or like 2 years? Obviously, like right now you started kind of time when COVID hit, but do you want to go like an MBA route? Do you see yourselves going into something like into a company eventually?
I think I haven't. So I'll tell you for a fact, there are people who I started with have already left. And like there's people constantly leaving. You're like, oh, you left? And like who are like day one you meet, you're like, oh, this person wants to be partner, and they've already left. Like I think one of the things that you always have to ask yourself is this where I'm happy? Is this where I see myself? I think, right, I very much see myself could be here long term. Like I don't know what long term means. I don't have an immediate like I'm looking. I have always considered going back and maybe not getting an MBA, but maybe like if I had to leave consulting, I personally, just my personal goals, I'd go back. So I'd consider getting like another degree, either like a master's or PhD. But like asking a question like, have I thought of pivoting? I haven't yet. But I will add that like PwC is really big on like finding different ways to keep you. Like they will pay for certain like MBAs, masters, whatever it is. Like they will really like they're not going to be like, oh, you want to leave? Okay, get out. They'll be like, all right, you want to leave, but what do you want to do? Maybe we have a different team in a different city, different place. Like they really want to do that. Or you want to get your master's? All right, we'll reduce your workload and have the ability where we even pitch in for your master's program and stuff like that. Like I think so. Like 7 months in, I haven't felt like it. But I'm also keeping my options open. Like I'm keeping my mind open. I'm not like I have to stay here, but I'm not also like here's the deadline. Like I think I think a lot of people, like I saw this all the time when they were in college. Like a lot of people were like, here's like I'm a big believer of create a plan, but don't set yourself a date that you don't know for sure that's like the date. Right? Like I think the easy example is you could say you want to get married at 28, but if you're 27 without and single, are you going to get married at 28? Your chances are pretty low, right? So I think what I would say is like think of a plan, but keep an open mind at all times. Because if you don't, you're gonna that's what happens is people, they're really insistent and then they pivot and then they lose out on even better possibilities that would have been better for them or for their career or for their life. So
thank you.
Yeah. I'll take one more and then I have to actually get back to work if there's any more questions.
I have a question for you. So as students in Cal Poly, are there any courses or activities that you think that we should do or focus on to set us apart from like other applicants?
I don't think so. Like I was president of CPAC, and I will say that like I know people who were not even involved in clubs or who took different classes that I did, and we've ended up in the same exact position. And I don't think that there's a like set like you do this, you do this, you do this, you're gonna be it. I think it comes down to like if you create your own path, you figure out how do you get from point A to point B, point C on what your point A, point B, and point C is, like you'll get there. Like my closest colleague is a computer science engineer. Like he did CPE at Cal Poly, but we work really close, like every day, all day, we're working together. And we're on the same engagement, same like kind of structure in terms of like how we're grouped together. But like I was involved in the business school and I did a bunch of like research classes. I did accounting, finance. I have a CPA. He's like hardcore engineer. He spent most of his days like grinding through engineering classes. And like he did a couple engineering projects that I still go over my head on what he does, but like we ended up at the same spot. I think it comes down to you find out what you believe your end goal is, and you kind of have like I think this is like not necessarily because I'm telling you have to figure it out yourself. And I know you're looking for a solution, but like I think you have to like kind of just imagine like if I want to be like I think I'll give an example. If you want to be an investment banker, right? There's so many different ways to become an investment banker. I think you could be really good at finance. You could be really good at selling. You could be involved in like valuations. Like I know there's like a big, I know Cyrus Ramazani, he teaches like a big like kind of applied like finance course where they do like portfolio management, stuff like that. Like I know people who did all those different things and ended up at the same firm with the same job. I think it comes down to how do you think you're going to structure like where you're going to be best at, where you're going to be most comfortable with, and going to learn and grow the most from. Because I don't think like there's a common solution for consulting. Maybe an audit or tax because they just need people. But I think consulting, because there's so many different types of consulting. There's so many different ways. There's like I'm accounting finance, but I'm also poli sci. Like I have half my background in liberal arts, and like I use that every day. But I've worked with technology every day, so it's like you never know. Like I think you should just find where your interests and passions are and use that and ride that as hard as you can.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. I have to go, everyone. Appreciate it. If there's any questions, I have my email there, so feel free to reach out or ask. I'll always make time if you want to either email or phone call or wherever it is. So
Sweet. Thank you
so awesome. Much. Thank you so much.
Good luck everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.
I am now going to stop